Is upside down today. So hello and welcome everyone. How lovely it is to see you here. Is anybody dancing already? Greg? No dancing. That's very disappointing, but okay.
Maybe
We'll
a couple
get
minutes. I gotta do my stretches first.
Okay, sweet. We'll get there as well. So let's wait for maybe just a few people, 1 minute or so. In the meantime, just welcome everyone. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm not sure how to answer that. So I'm just going to be excited, nervous. I'm not usually nervous before these things, but today I am. It's been a very, very, very busy day. And this is the end of the day. So.
But did I hear the rumor correctly that we might make it a Netflix show where we're going to do this like forever? Like how many seasons do you think we can pull off?
I wonder who started that rumor.
I don't know. Maybe there's somebody in this room who started this rumor, no?
Well, it could be possible. I mean, we did talk about this a few years ago, but we never made it happen. So
yeah,
let's
well,
see.
we even called it the pizza show, which is something that we should probably keep. All right, everyone. So I'm just going to start playing a little video and then we'll start. Oops. All right, this is a clue for me to actually stop sharing. So welcome everyone and welcome to this, what is it? The magic hour, the smashing hour, the pizza show. What is it, Sarah? Do we know what it actually is?
A fun hour.
A fun hour, I think. A coffee hour, a tea hour, anything like that. Welcome everyone. Ginger. This is used to be a very warm, hot, beautiful cappuccino. Now it's just the rest of the cappuccino. I'm not sure if it's actually officially counts as a cappuccino, but that's a separate conversation as well. Now, we do have wonderful people here in the room, and I just want to welcome everyone in here for kind of a random casual conversation about the meaning of life, front-end, pizza, and everything in between. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this as well. And it's not just us chatting, so feel free to just drop in and ask some questions and come on microphone on camera and just share what you think would be interesting to explore as well. From my end, we have prepared, of course, a couple of questions. And if you don't know Sarah, I don't know how to reply to that. If you don't know Sarah, then you need to know Sarah, because Sarah has been working a lot in the front-end world of ours on accessibility, SVG, animation, CSS, and everything in between, design systems as well, and everything in between. So every time there is an article by Sarah, this article is probably going to get a lot of hearts and also a lot of reads. And so this brings us here.
Well, what matters to me the most, more than the hearts and the reads, is for it to be useful to people. So people, even if one person gets something useful out of it, then that's mission accomplished.
Exactly. So just before we actually start the conversation, let's just get a glimpse of where everybody is joining from today. So if you could just drop in the chat for us to know where you're connecting from today, who traveled the furthest to be here with us today. Maybe somebody is still awake or somebody woke up at 2 o'clock at night to be here. Oh, we have people from Morocco and India.
This is so fun.
And Southampton and Egypt and Mexico and Norway and Bangladesh and Germany, Charlottesville, Ellen. Wow, that's a lot of people. This is fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, this is nice because we can actually get to talk to each other. Sarah, so how have you been this couple of interesting years? 18 months. Did they change you? Well, I would say it's around 2 years now, right? Where things are different.
Well, fun fact, I would say that my entire life, well, most of it started changing in 2019. So that was, well, when did COVID start again? Was it in?
I remember that day vividly. It was March 7th for me.
That was 2020 or 2019?
Yeah, 2020.
2020, yeah. So all the changes started for me in 2019. So they're not exactly COVID related. I've always been working remote, so not much has changed as far as work goes. So you have to be very specific with your question. Are you asking how COVID and the global situation has changed me, or in general, because we have had a lot of things happening in Lebanon.
Yes, exactly. That's actually, I was really pointing to both, because I've been following the situation in Lebanon, starting from explosion and everything that's been happening. And it was like, on top of that, you had also the COVID situation and everything. And on top of that, you had to do your work. You had some big plans for a secret project that you're working on at the moment as well.
It's not that secret anymore. Although there is a secret project that you in particular would be super interested in, but I'm not telling you about it yet.
That's very friendly of you, as always. All right. But I mean, in general, I would say that just to give you kind of an example, for me, everything changed. I think I would love to hear from everybody else as well, but for me, just literally, absolutely everything changed. I become a person who has a mouse, who has a keyboard, who has a secondary screen. I was not that person at all. I would be sitting from coffee shops all the time and working on my little screen with my little trackpad, and that was my life. And now I have light, I have a camera, I have a good microphone, I have a pretty decent setup, I would say. This is very unusual for me.
Do you like these changes? Well, that's what matters.
Actually, yes.
Okay.
Personally, if I'm being very, very honest, I absolutely love the concept of online things like this. I know that many of us are really tired of this, and who wants to spend more time in front of the screen? But the opportunity you get with gatherings like this, where you have literally people from all over the world joining at the same time, that's just incredible, right? So would you say that these last years or so, did they change you in some sort of profound way for the better, make you stronger, I guess? Right. Also, by the way, just a quick note before you answer, Sarah, sorry. If you want to follow along with transcriptions, with subtitles, please blockade the ... in Zoom at the bottom right corner. Click on it, and then you can choose show subtitles. Sarah?
Yes. So as I mentioned, the changes started in 2019, and they have been profound on every single level. I think the thing that changed the least for me is my work, because I've been doing remote for 9 years, 10 years, ever since I got started, basically. So not much has changed. My setup has changed a lot. It's definitely gotten better, but not much other than that has changed as far as work goes. But life, oof.
Oh, I can imagine, of course. Yeah. So what are you working on at the moment? Is there any secret project which involves a lot of, I guess, involves a lot of, so what is it? More accessibility these days, more regular CSS SVG stuff?
Everything. So I have 1, 2, I'm counting my personal website as a project. So that's 1, 2, 3 or 4 projects happening at the same time. They are all very different from each other, different objectives, so different learnings across each of them. And then on top of that, there is the accessibility course. And on top of that, there's that secret thing that I will not tell you about just yet.
You're always difficult. Why do you have to be so difficult all the time?
You get that out of me. I don't know. I don't know. You have that talent.
Do I? Okay, well, yeah. that's useful to know indeed. Well, I think it's interesting for me to see that many projects these days are kind of circling around the same topic, more or less. So because I'm doing some consultancy along the way as well. And it's very interesting that every single organization I'm working with is struggling in one way or the other, on a technical level, on a design level, with design systems. I guess that this must be a part of what you're doing as well. Are you actively involved in building design systems, or is it just something that clients maybe want to have, but don't really have yet? Like, where is it now? What do you think?
Both. Like, to be fair, most of my design system-y stuff has been with Super Friendly. And right now I'm not working on any Super Friendly project. So all of my current work is not design system-y. Although there is something that working with Super Friendly has English. So, well, it's not just working with Super Friendly. So the way I approach building websites in general is we start with components. That's how we do things these days. And then there was also working with Super Friendly. So one byproduct of every single project that I work on is a pattern library. I know that a pattern library is not exactly a design system, but when you add some documentation to it, which I almost always do, you have sort of like a design system wannabe, not actually a design system. So that is the kind of work that I'm doing now. But with Super Friendly, actually, we did something even more interesting as far as design system goes, is So Super Friendly has this thing called Design System Diagnostics. I don't know if you've heard of it. If not, if your organization wants to start getting with design systems, or you already have one and you want to see how it's doing, or you want to improve it, you want to do it better, Super Friendly has this service called Design System Diagnostics, and they have a team working. They assembled a team to work on that particular kind of project, and I'm a member of that team. So at first, I wasn't really sure how interesting this would be, but to be honest, it's been fascinating, because when we diagnose design systems, we get into the design system of the organization or the company that we're working with. So we get to see everything. We see design, we see code, we see lots of stuff, and there's so much that you can learn from just from looking at how other people do these things. Seriously, stop me at some point, because I can just...
That's interesting. Please keep going. I'm all ears. I think we're all kind of interested to see where we are, I guess, at this point, because I think that I remember vividly, maybe really 2-3 years ago, design systems everywhere, and everybody was doing design systems, and they still do. And I think that this is a really great approach as well. But I also see something else happening, which scares me a little bit, if I'm being honest, Sarah, because I see quite a few companies building forum design systems, like dedicated systems for different sets of components. So it would be, if it's a big enterprise company, right? They maybe don't care that much about navigation, but they care about building out or producing good forms. So forms, everything forms, like different kind of checkboxes and everything, and patterns and examples of things combined. And then I also saw, like in another project, the same for tables, right? Two very distinct projects, right? Because very often I think organizations are a little bit reluctant to just invest a lot of money in a big whole thing, design system for everything. So they just pick something that seems to be critical, right? That's something that's being kind of the output of the work that they are producing. Maybe they have a builder, configurator that produces those tables or manages those tables and so on, and fix on that. And that's a huge beast on its own, because I remember in the past we had just, small screens, large screens, but now there are very different small screens, very different large screens. So it's really difficult to get it right. I wouldn't even know where to start.
That's why you shouldn't be designing based on screen size. You should always be designing content out. There's an article on Illustapart that I absolutely love. It's an old article, but it's still super valuable today. It's about content out design. If you follow that principle, all these various screen sizes, they're not going to be a big problem anymore. And as far as design systems goes, and having a design system, a separate design system for forms or for different kinds of components, if I were to channel the inner Dan Moll inside of me, I would say that at least that's a good start, because all design systems have to start somewhere. So you start with, I'm pretty sure that Dan would say this a lot more eloquently, because, my English sometimes sucks, but you have to start somewhere, and you start with the most basic needs, or the most
ongoing kind of the things that are
really happening
critical
right
for the
now.
company right now.
Yeah, exactly. So what they need right now, you start there, and then maybe sometimes a team assembles itself. Sometimes that happens in a lot of organizations. So if you have at least a couple, 2 or 3 people interested in doing this, they might start with the design system. And something that I've also learned from Dan, I love his work, so you can obviously tell probably, is the best way to convince a company or anyone of the benefit of design systems is to show them. Don't ask them if you can do that. Just do it, show them the benefits, and then they can start getting on board of things.
There was also an article by Ben Callahan from Sparkbox. They just ran a big study of design systems recently. I think they run it every year, if I'm not mistaken. And essentially, they try to measure the success of a design system and put some numbers to it. And just yesterday, maybe Jarin can find it. If you go to the box and the company Sparkbox design system, they just published an article which kind of gives us some numbers, because very often, how do you make a case for a design system, and how can you measure the success? And I think that Dan also wrote this article about scorecards for design systems. How do you measure it across different product teams, right? So that's very fascinating. Talking about articles though, what are some of the really interesting things that you maybe discovered recently? Or anything that you've thought, oh, wow, that's a good CSS stuff, or a design system stuff, or anything else? Was there anything out there? Just while you're thinking, so nobody can hear us. Dear friends, it's not just us chatting, so feel free to drop in questions in the chat as well. This is really also about having a conversation with you all. So if you have any questions or anything, or you want us to point us towards something and guide the conversation in a direction that it should never go to, like the best pizza with pineapple or not, we can totally talk.
Totally.
No, this is a separate conversation we need to have. We can go into details, but maybe people care more about pizza than design systems. Who knows?
Okay.
I hope not, but that's that's up to wonderful people who are joining us here today to discuss.
There should be some sort of no pineapples, no Vince, no.
I think that Vince strongly disagrees with you.
That's fine. I mean,
not only Vince, I have a feeling.
You have a feeling. Okay, we should have some sort of voting system here.
We need to have a profound research on that, and maybe right after the chat. But in the meantime, maybe there
articles.
I mean, there are a lot of people who are.
Absolutely why not both? No.
All right, that's okay. Why not both? Oh, well, this starts a conversation. Now the conversation is happening. But really, are there any kind of interesting articles that you spotted recently?
There is a lot.
Too much?
Yeah, too much really, because I could point you to specific blogs that I love reading.
Yeah, sure.
And then if you can go to then I'm going to have to pull up my RSS reader. Who uses RSS? Raise of hands.
Yeah, please write in the chat if you're using RSS.
RSS is one of the best inventions in all human history. So blogs that I absolutely recommend that I have been reading a lot recently, and golden articles, golden value, golden content. I'm just going to go through them in alphabetical order because that's how they are here. Sure. So
we will be expecting your RSS export later, of course.
I'm not sure. I mean, that's a little... I mean, it sometimes can get, I know this is going to be too honest, but I'm just going to be too honest here. I fear that sometimes people might take things personally, like if you don't follow their blog, or although I try to follow as many blogs as possible, and unfortunately, quite a few blogs don't even have RSS feeds, so I tend to nag them on Twitter. Please add an RSS feed. Sometimes it works. Right. So there is Adrian Roselli, 100%, Anton Stan, Eric Bailey, Jim Nielsen. I've been really enjoying Jim Nielsen's articles recently. There's a lot more, but I'm just going to point out to the blogs that have been very active recently. So I've been reading them more than the others, but there's a long list here. Scott O'Hara, my friend, fantastic accessibility content.
Scott is incredible. I mean, I have to just emphasize that. I mean, just last week, I think he wrote this article about checkboxes and radio buttons, I think, a new research. Wow, this is stuff that I don't know many people who are going to that level of detail, and that's always incredible. It's just really getting really bulletproof stuff ready to be used. That's incredible.
Yeah, if you don't know him, you should, and you should follow him on Twitter and his blog. Of course, there's Smashing Magazine, there's the Cloud4 blog, CSS in Real Life, CSS Tricks, of course, who doesn't? Oddbird, Miriam Suzanne has been posting all these amazing new CSS things that I think we should probably talk about a little bit. And then there's the Stark blog, accessibility stuff, the Accessibility Project, TPGI, the Paciello group. These are the ones that I've been reading the most recently. There are other blogs they haven't been posting too often. But then also had to Adactio, Jeremy Keith. He has two RSS feeds. One of them is for his own articles, and the other one is the links. So everything that he likes, he posts links to. So it's kind of like an RSS of an RSS.
Exactly. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Yeah.
Yeah. In general, actually, speaking about articles as well, speaking about CSS, maybe specifically. Wow, I've been so excited to see so many things happening in CSS this year. Last year's, I would say, right? And I think that many other things that actually came up, even those little details, I don't even know where to start. Like, I fell in love with scroll margin top. I just feel very passionate about scroll. Maybe I'm just alone. I don't know. But there are so many little things that make things so much better, right? I am wondering though, how you feel the writing of CSS has changed, is changing, or will change. So now we kind of have the prototype of container queries, right? Now we can play with it, and hopefully we will be using that approach, kind of starting any kind of writing any kind of CSS. How do you write CSS today? How do you want to write CSS tomorrow?
Those of you who have been following me for a few years know how excited I've been about container queries. I used to tweet about them, that I wanted them every once in a while. But I have to say that there are a few CSS features that I'm even more excited about than CSS container queries today, because those are the features that I find that I need more in my work. Container queries have become more a natural thing. This is something that we shouldn't even have to think about. So yes, it's absolutely fantastic that they're coming. I couldn't be happier that they are, because everyone, I think that all of us will be using them, and they will change the way we start implementing designs and components, etc. But what I would have the highest on my wish list is subgrid. Absolutely. Like, I need this so much. And because some of the projects, and one of them that I worked on, I worked with a couple of friends on a project for one of Europe's largest organizations. And the way we approached building that was in sections, kind of like what I did for Prismic Slices. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that project, but basically when you want to build a website, you would have a bunch of sections that you can build on top of each other. So you assemble these sections to create a website, not components, but rather sections. And if you want to have all the flexibility that you want with as far as layout goes, and you want to have all those wrappers, and you also have the accessibility wrappers when you need to use a section versus sometimes you want to use a div, etc. We have display contents that can help with getting rid of some of those containers so that we can lay children out on the outer grid, but there's an accessibility issue with that at the moment that hasn't been fixed yet. But subgrid
part of the
is...
problem I'm having.
Oh, that's somebody unmuted themselves, right? Sorry, Sarah, please continue.
No worries. What was I saying?
You was talking about outer container.
Yeah. So subgrid and stuff like that. So if I want the flexibility that I need building scalable and truly flexible layout systems today, I do want subgrid more than any time before. I absolutely want subgrid. And then another thing that I've been super excited about ever since I watched Miriam Suzanne's talk at the AEA, the An Event Apart Fall Summit, is Cascade Layers. Oh my God, they are going to change the way you write CSS for design systems, or even from tiny projects to larger ones. You can start enforcing accessibility rules. So I already use ARIA and CSS to enforce accessibility. And it's also, by the way, a very neat way to teach backend developers about accessibility, because that has happened because I was working on a project. See, I'm starting to go.
That's fine. That's fine. That's exactly what I'm struggling with at the moment. So please tell me.
So I was working on this project with a couple of German friends earlier this year, and one of them is a backend developer. And so I had built this navigation, and of course, if you have the currently active page, you want to add ARIA current to the active link in the navigation. I stopped using class names for many things in CSS because I started using ARIA attributes as CSS hooks. So I remember he was implementing the navigation on the back end, and he was like, I can't find the CSS class that you are using to apply the active styles to that link. What exactly do I need to use? And that's when I love teaching people when I'm working with them. It just comes naturally. So I was like, we're not using any CSS class names. We don't need that. All you have to do is make sure that it has the ARIA current attribute. And then I start explaining why the ARIA current attribute is important and what it does. And it's not just ARIA current. You have all kinds of ARIA attributes and
disabled and everything else as well.
Yeah. It's not just that. Like, there's even a few months ago, while working on the course, I learned about the role note, the note role, which is an ARIA role value note. So currently in my current website, which I'm going to be completely refactoring, I have, if I want to add a note in the middle of an article, I have a div that has a class that says note, for example. But in the refactor, I'm going to be using an aside that has a role note. And I'm not going to be needing any class names anymore because I will be using role note as a hook in my CSS. So wait, what brought me to this? I was talking about something before. Yeah, Cascade Layers. Cascade Layers. Yeah. So you can have all of these accessibility enforcements in their own Cascade layer, and you make sure that that Cascade layer is always going to override all the other ones. So no matter what happens, no one can break that accessibility. That's just one example. You can start structuring your CSS and enforcing best practices. Cascade layers, I fell in love with them. when I watched Mia's talk, and I can't wait for them even more than container queries.
That sounds very exciting. That's maybe calls for an article that we should bring up at some point, because I think we had so many things on our hands at the moment, so we just really lost track maybe a little bit of what's been happening last month or so. But we're keeping track.
You should ask Mia to write the article.
Yes,
because I can't think of. I hope she.
Yeah, maybe I should do it now. No, probably not. I can do it a little bit later. No, I don't think so. Maybe we can jump in some questions that came from the chat. So Vince is wondering if that's okay with you, Sarah?
Yeah. I was just looking at one of the questions. What does ARIA label node do? It's not an ARIA label. It's ARIA role. So role equals node. It just adds the semantics of a node to a section. So usually there's a definition for that in the ARIA specification, which would be a lot more accurate than what I will be saying. But basically, you want to tell the screen reader user that this is a node. That's how you would do it. So you would use an aside element. You may be able to use another one. Everything as far as ARIA is concerned, as far as accessibility, and it's something that I will be emphasizing a lot in the course. Always make sure that you test, even if you know that something works a certain way. There may be bugs, there may be implementation bugs, there may be implementation gaps, there may be the same thing that should be working a particular way may stop working at some point, or a browser and screen reader combination may end up giving you a different result than another browser and screen reader combination. So ARIA node, the role node, is supposed to give semantics of a node to an aside element, for example, inside of a main article.
Right, makes sense. And then there was a question that came up. I think we're going to have a very interesting conversation now.
Yeah.
Sarah?
Yeah.
Tailwind.
No, I don't want to get into. I'm not afraid to get into it. I just I've started adopting this principle because it just makes my life a lot better. If I don't have anything.
We're listening.
I know you are. That's why I'm very careful about what I'm saying. Let's just say that if something works for you, use it. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what Vitaly thinks. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. If something works for you and your team, if it gets the job done, if it does not prioritize DX, developer experience, over user experience. So in other words, if it does not compromise the user experience or make it worse, then use it, whatever the heck it is. Yeah, just use whatever works for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I was just recently in one of the conversations about Tailwind, and I was a little bit confused, to be honest, because I think that we consciously or subconsciously, we've been building those camps on the web, and we've been doing this to the level that now there are Angular people, there are React people, and there are still jQuery people out there. I mean, jQuery is still maybe, I don't know. It's all the experiences you get with jQuery apps are usually faster than the ones with React apps. So that's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
But what I was really surprised about is that, at least maybe this is my understanding, and I think that if we have any participants here who disagree, please say so in the chat as well. But I was in this conversation where there was a CSS person who is mostly writing CSS and feels very comfortable in the UI, UX, kind of the CSS front end side of things. And then there was also a JavaScript developer who is a very good JavaScript developer and really feels very, I would say, passionate about JavaScript and all of that. And so there was a clash, because on the one hand, the CSS person would say, well, BAM is great, right? And okay, we can use some utility classes and so on and so forth. But then this JavaScript person said, BAM, isn't it like a 2017-18 thing? Is it still used at all?
Yes.
Tailwind all the way. And so I think if you, dear friends joining us, 111 of you, if you had to choose, or what, I'm not choose, that's not fair. Would you say, what would be your preference today when you're starting a new project? Would you be using Tailwind? Would you be using SAS? Would you be using BAM? Would you be using something else entirely? Right? I think, yeah, please go ahead.
I would say that some people are going to be suggesting both. So I know that a lot of people start with Tailwind because it allows them to start prototyping faster, but then they move to another system. Although I'm not really sure how time consuming that would be. Personally, I would not move from one system to another if I can just start with whatever I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, I agree. There is also obviously ITCSS. I absolutely love ITCSS, but more for organizing files and folders and structures, right? But yeah, I never, maybe it's just me, but I do feel very comfortable with BAM. Maybe I also just didn't play enough with Tailwind personally, but I don't think that 2021 is the year when we should retire BAM personally.
No, definitely not.
I mean, even if you're using something like Smacks or anything like that, that's perfectly fine as well. Again, as Sarah said, I think it's, as long as it's working for you, that's the most important part. Right?
I would definitely not retire BAM. Especially, I mean, definitely not for Tailwind. And yeah. I mean this in a very good way. Like Tailwind is not, it's not a replacement. It's not a comparison between these two. It's completely different things. They do completely different things. And I love them. Can I answer just a couple of questions?
Because... Of course, go, please.
Okay, so is it more like a caption or a footnote, the ARIA role? It's neither. It's just a note. It's maybe something in the middle of an article, you're talking about something and you have a side note, maybe about browser support or maybe about ancillary content. I hope I'm using that word correctly. So it's complementary to the article, but kind of taking you out of context, maybe. Just a side note, just like we do when you have a regular conversation with someone and you just want to give a side note, that's what a role note is. How about SAS? I'm not sure what that question is, but I love SAS. I still use SAS. I will be using SAS much less in favor of post CSS because I'm super excited about all these new CSS features, and I only use SAS for nesting today. I know that SAS is still useful. I know that many people still use it. It still has its uses, 100%.
But there is still a proposal for nesting in CSS, right?
It's coming. Well. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm considering post CSS, because I can start playing with that stuff early.
Yeah, just a quick note from my end, but I don't think so. It's also a question that comes up quite a lot. So should we retire SAS at some point and just use CSS? I don't think we will.
I was just going to say that. No, they do different things, and SAS, no, they don't do different things. I mean, SAS has specific capabilities that many teams still need and still use. It depends on what you need. If you need mixins and if you need all these math stuff that Anna Tudor sometimes works with, you would absolutely want to use SAS. It's not, unfortunately, now we also have these two camps, pro SAS and anti-SAS. Why? I mean, just use whatever works for you. If I say that I'm going to stop using SAS, it doesn't mean that I'm saying that people should stop using SAS. I'm just saying that I don't need it anymore because I don't use it for that kind of stuff. If I'm working on a client project and the client project is using SAS for more than just nesting and variables, then of course I will be using SAS for those things too. So please don't make this into pro SAS, anti SAS. You should use SAS, you should not use SAS. Just use whatever works for you and don't try. Be nice, be kind, and don't force your preferences onto other people, because the web is a nice community and I just love it. I mean, it should stay that way.
Yeah, I would request a round of clap emoji here in the chat as a testament to the agreement to what Sarah just said. There are a few more questions coming in. Sarah, would you like to take them on?
There are many. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so one of them is, what recommendation would you have to level up our full stack engineers' accessibility skills? There are so many different resources, so I'm worried about brain dumping them, the list of links I used to learn. Of course, there's going to be my shameless plug, my accessibility course when it's out.
When is it out?
Let's talk about that at the end of the chat, okay? Because I have a story on that. It should have been out in July, but a lot of things happened, and then let's keep that till the end of the chat.
Yeah, sure.
So I would say definitely start with something like workshops, maybe bring someone in. You can start consulting with Super Friendly if you're interested. And I'm not sponsored. I'm currently not working with them, but they are just amazing people. And they are the most professionally skilled people with design systems that I know. And they have all these different kinds of services that they can help your company with. It could be workshops. I could even help with accessibility. So there's a lot of options, but I would say that teaching them, spreading knowledge, first things, it can take you very far. And my course is definitely going to help. And I'm not saying it because it's my course. I'm just saying it because I know that the content in the course can definitely help. I'm positive.
I have no doubts about that either, to be honest.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Cube, CSS, BAM. Okay, so there's a lot of
There was also a very nice and friendly note from Oleg Kremiansky, who is enjoying seeing us both here And that's so warm hello to you, Oleg, as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining.
Hello. Which you prefer, Sass variables versus CSS3 variables? They are different. I definitely use CSS custom properties, aka CSS variables, because they are more powerful and I don't need to use Sass variables anymore. But if there is a use case for Sass variables that CSS custom properties can't do, not really sure, use them, whatever works for you. Live text semantic HTML within an SVG. Oof, that's a very packed question and a very technical question. And I will need a lot more specific details as to what exactly you're trying to do. I can't answer the question the way it is now.
I think there was also a question from Alaeddin on, that's kind of a slightly different topic that's interesting to pick as well. Can you tell us how you choose a subject for an article and then the process of writing it? Do you just go into all writing mode and you have your tea next to you and you have your room space and go, I write? Or how does it?
No, I wish it were that ideal, but no. The way I write article has been completely messy, but I like it. I'm going to call it creative instead of messy. So I'm using Clover. Again, this is not sponsored. Anything I recommend is not sponsored. I never get paid to recommend anything to people, just a heads up. And if I ever do, I will let you know. Clover has been my absolute favorite note-taking app, although it can do a lot more than just take notes. So I've been drafting all of my articles in there, and it has this option. So you can either create a linear page, just like any other page. So you start typing linearly, or you can create a surface, which is kind of like a surface that you would get in a design app such as Figma. And you can
like whiteboard.
Yeah, and you can put anything on there. And so if I have an idea for how do I decide if an idea is worth becoming an article, that could be a question. Anything could be worth an article. It depends. Like if you've struggled with something and it took you more than 30 minutes to figure out the solution, it might be worth an article, especially if you tried Googling and you didn't find the solution. You could write about that. If you're learning something new, whatever that thing is, no matter what the topic is, it's your blog, it's your website, you can write whatever you want. I like taking notes when I'm learning something, and that's how I started. I used to turn those notes into articles. Now I don't do that anymore. I have a completely different flow. It's very messy. Like I don't have a structure, so. Yeah, but yeah, I don't get into writing mode. Sometimes it's just that all the ideas are inside of my head and I need to get them out, and I just get them out and I leave the editing either for the next day or a few other days.
Yeah, there was also a question from Vince about where can I learn more about design systems and how to build them. From my end, I can say that, for example, I know that Dan also published a video course on design systems a while back, maybe 2-3 months ago. So that's pretty cool. So if you type in Daniel Mall video course design system, you'll be able to find it. We also have Brad Frost's workshops coming up, I think in December, if I'm not mistaken, 3-4 weeks from now. Also an online workshop, which you might want to try out. As of resources out there, free resources, I think there is also, was it an Envision? I think there is an Envision's book on design systems and practices around it. Yes, if you type in Envision design systems, you'll find a very nice HTML book, which is free as well. Beyond that, it's maybe just me, but I feel like everything is changing so fast in design systems world too. So it's like, oh, what is going on? I have no idea. So that's a separate conversation.
Follow Super Friendly. They have all the resources. Go to their website. They have a lot of they have links to books. They have links to the course, Dan Mall's course that Vitaly just mentioned. That's where I learned everything I know about design systems. And then you can, they have these resources, and from their resources, you can start linking to other websites and exploring more people. Yep. So I would, no, Dan, sorry, I'm going to type that. Dan Mall.
Excellent. There was also a question on, do you have a rule of thumb of when to use article tag or section tag?
Well, they have different semantics, and it depends on what you're building. If what you're building has the semantics of an article, use an article. Go to the HTML specification. I know that not many people do that. Every element has a purpose. When you know the purpose of that element and what it's supposed to do, you know exactly what to use it for. I don't have a specific rule of thumb. Sections, I would use sections. It depends on how I want to surface that content to screen readers, because all the semantics that you write, they end up affecting screen reader navigation. You can expose more content, or you can decide not to expose content. And the elements that you use and how you label them, sorry, that's my UPS. The elements that you use and how whether you give them labels, accessible names or not, it depends. It depends on what you're doing, literally. So find the definition, the purpose, and then you can decide which one to use.
Okay, there's also a question from Heather. Can you give a general overview of how you would approach including live text in SVG? Like
I saw that.
Right.
I would need a lot more information also as well. Like I need to know exactly what we're doing before.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe then going in different direction altogether, right? Just because obviously when it comes to front end, there are so many things we could ask and so many directions we could take. And it's kind of a funny situation because I was just literally like within the last 3 months, I experienced very interesting and unusual situations where I didn't believe would be happening so fast. Do you remember this wonderful property in CSS that you would write sometimes in CSS, which would be not the property, but kind of the style saying zoom 1 with asterisk? Ooh. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, hold on. Don't reveal the secrets. Does anybody else remember what it does in the chat? So it was essentially something like asterisk zoom equal 1, something like this, I think. Here we go. Killian is on it, right? Force has layout. Oh, that's incredible. The reason why I'm bringing this up, this is one of the IE hacks that I discovered recently in one of the slightly older code bases. And nobody touched it for a decade because nobody knew what it was doing. And that brought me to the thinking, is it the time in 2021 where some people, or the next generation of front-end developers will not know what IE means? Probably not yet. It's probably going to take a couple of years, right? But why am I bringing this up, right? Because just before that, maybe a week or two before that, I was in a cafe just taking coffee, and I saw this kind of group of front-end people, very young teenagers, maybe, I don't know, 16, 17, kind of coding away their, websites and stuff. And I was very excited because one of them said, "Did you check what it looks like on Internet Explorer?" And the other said, "What is it? I don't know what it is." I was like, wow, that's the world which we kind of ended up with. There are people in this world who don't know, who are doing front end and don't know what Internet Explorer is. So
they're lucky.
Well, yes, I think that Internet Explorer was a very adventurous thing, I guess. But that was really this moment where everything changed for me, right? The times have changed. So that brings me to this ultimate question, which is it was a very long introduction to the question. So what do you need to know? Or maybe let's rephrase it. What does it actually mean to be a front-end developer today? What do you need to know? Like, what do we say? Who can call themselves front-end developer? And what skills would you need? Do you need to know everything? That's impossible.
No. When you first asked the question, before starting to give more details, it felt more like an existential question. I was like,
right.
HTML, know it well. Know exactly what each element does, what the purpose, what happens when you use each. CSS, absolutely, of course. SVG, I remember Dmitry Baranovsky back when I gave, do you remember that talk?
I think it was in Australia?
Well, I think I gave it in Australia, but I started it in Berlin. So that was my second talk ever. And I quoted Dmitry Baranovsky. I was working on SVG a lot back then and giving talks about SVG. And Dmitry had said that slide always got a lot of reactions from people. If you don't know SVG, you can't call yourself a front-end developer. So I would kind of say, I wouldn't take it to that extreme, but yes, absolutely, it's important. So as far as markup goes, I would say HTML, SVG, accessibility. Wait, I'm going to say it in layers because I always think in progressive enhancement. So HTML plus SVG. On top of that is ARIA. Absolutely make sure that you know each layer very well before you move on to the next one. HTML, ARIA, CSS, JavaScript. Use whatever framework that you want. Use any tool that you want, as long as it does not affect accessibility, it does not compromise accessibility, it does not compromise the user experience, and as long as you're doing the foundations right. So use React, use Vue, use any fancy JavaScript framework that is going to show up in the next 50 years. Just make sure that the output of that, which is the heart of every page, the HTML, the content is accessible. Once you do that, just have fun, use whatever you want, and be a front-end developer. You can't be a front-end developer if you don't know HTML, accessibility, SVG, ARIA, CSS, and on top of that, at least some presentational vanilla JavaScript.
That's a lot already. I would say that's quite a foundation you need to have. So do you believe in that myth that people are spreading around the world, saying that there are people out there who are unicorns or also called full stack developers?
I know that a lot of people have very strong opinions on that. I'm not going to have a strong opinion on that.
I see. That's very diplomatic.
No, it's because there's a lot of nuance, and you can't just judge people like that. Maybe I'm a front-end developer. I know my stuff really, really, really well. Maybe at some point I decide to learn some back-end language and I build a website front to back. That makes me a unicorn, and I know my stuff. But I think that if everyone is honest with themselves, they will know. They know if they're good enough, if they can call themselves a unicorn. If you dabble in everything, yes, you're a unicorn, whatever that means. But you can be good enough to build things, but how good are the things that you're building? That's what's going to decide if you're a good unicorn or not.
Yeah, I think in many ways it's probably just very, very difficult, I think, to just know everything. Like, I'm totally lost most of the time, right? Just because I look at people have, there is this article on this and there is this article on that. And I understand what GraphQL is, I understand what React is, I know what Next.js does, I know what all those things do. The more important thing for me is not to be have a feeling that, oh, I can do this and I can do that at the same time, but kind of do something well. So I'd rather be a very good CSS person, I would say, CSS designer, interface designer, whatever you want to call it, or front-end designer, right? Whatever you want to call it, than be an average full stack developer. That's kind of my feeling around it. Although, if I'm being very honest, most of the time when I look at job openings that show up, very often you're going to be expected to know just everything, and obviously that everything has to match the technical stack that the company has. That means React, Tailwind, this and this and this, TypeScript, and so on and so forth. So for me, it's very comfortable. Frankly, I feel very comfortable not following the big trends and not tapping all over, but just having a map in front of me, so I know, okay, if I need to dive in deeper into Tailwind, I know people who are really good at Tailwind, so I'll just go and ask, and they'll guide me towards tutorials or anything else, right? But it's probably not necessary to know everything. So I'm totally with you on this as well. Anybody else who, it's probably going to be a very mean question, like who is a full stack developer at this point? No, I don't think that's fair. Generalists, says Richard, especially in the agency world, but I don't think those that call themselves full stack developers can truly handle every aspect of a project. That's very likely to happen as well. A slightly technical question from Jeff, and we are going to wrap up in approximately 12 minutes because it's a smashing hour, right? What fallback strategies are you using these days with newer CSS, like logical properties? As I'm excited about newer CSS, it seems that it's becoming more difficult to progressively enhance.
I don't use them on all of my projects just yet. It depends. Like on my personal website, I will be using them, and I don't even care about a fallback because I know my audience. I know that most of the people that are going to visit my website are not going to be using any of the old browsers. I can get as creative and as edgy as I want with my CSS on my personal projects, but as far as client projects go, I'm still very careful about using some properties. If I can use certain things with feature queries, then yes, of course, you can feature query something and then add it as an enhancement. And in the future, you can remove the blocks that you no longer need, or you can use something like post CSS. But here's the thing, sometimes I know that there are so many cutting edge new things that are coming out and things that we are very much looking forward to start using in our everyday projects. But truth of the matter is some things, it's like, when people talk about React is the most popular framework, everyone's talking about React. But then when you go look at the numbers and the actual websites that use React, versus the websites that use jQuery, you'll find that the real work happening, most of the actual everyday work of companies and people all over the world, they still use jQuery. Not everyone is using the big, fancy, hot framework. It's the same with CSS. Wait, I lost my train of thought. Why is that the same as CSS?
We can just move forward. That's okay. That's okay.
No. My point is, yeah, that was. So in real life projects, you have certain requirements and you have certain browsers that you absolutely have to support. It depends on the audience. It depends on the users. It depends on many factors that are specific to every project. You may be able to use a feature and use feature queries as an enhancement, or you may just not be able to. Otherwise, for me, I think it defeats the purpose. If I have to write more CSS just so that I can use that fancy new feature, then I'd rather write less CSS with a less fancy feature, if that makes sense. Until that fancy feature has better support. But I do use a lot of things as an enhancement, just a heads up. I am progressive enhancement advocate. I use progressive enhancement in everything. Not everything can easily be progressively enhanced. Depends on, can you use it in a feature query or not? So a lot of it depends.
Yeah. So there was also a question from Vince, I guess, at this point, because we on the one hand, we have all the fancy technologies, but again, I think if I'm not mistaken, looking at the data from 2020, React was like 4% of website out there and jQuery was 83%. Now, very often, of course, you will be using both jQuery and React and maybe something else as well. But the same happens also in the world of CMS. And so do you have to deal with WordPress at all? Drupal, those kind of things? So what would be the kind of the backend side of things if you have to touch it ever? Like with this new cool shiny project that you may be working on, what would be, will there be a very different stack? Are they using WordPress?
They're using 11t. We're using 11t, which is like awesome. I almost never have to touch any backend, which I think that I'm lucky like that, working on my projects. When people hire me for the skills that I have, I rarely have to dig into the back end stuff. We're using 11t on this current project, and this is, someone sent me a DM, Janice. Well, I think that's the, I don't think the name is Janice. I think that was the.
Yeah, that was the thing. So
the nickname, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
So I got a direct message from someone. When will we get the chance to see your new website using 11t, and will you open source the Hugo powered? I will not open source the Hugo powered website because it's embarrassing. The code is very old.
It's embarrassingly wonderful.
No, it's embarrassingly bad. Well, okay, not that bad, but I mean, it's embarrassing. It's years old. I haven't touched the code in years. The 11t website, here's the thing. That brings me to the accessibility course thing. Working on 5 things at the same time, while also living in Lebanon. Those of you who know, and those of you who don't, is not easy. I haven't been able to make the time for everything. And that's why everything, that's why everything is taking a lot more time than it was meant to be and than it was supposed to be. The course was supposed to be out in July. That was my main plan. I was supposed to turn my workshop into a course, basically. So I have the content, just record that into videos. And then I started thinking, well, I should probably talk about this more. I should probably update this more. I should probably add more exercises. I should probably elaborate on all these topics. And I ended up with a completely different thing from the workshop, which is much better, but also much bigger. And I'm doing everything on my own. Like, I need to build the website. I have no idea how to set up the payment system yet. I have no idea what to use for the backend yet. I'm learning how to edit videos. I've learned some basic video editing stuff. So having to do all of those while also tackling client projects, while also trying to write articles, while working on your own website and your friend's website, and living in Lebanon, once again, it's just not easy. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to get the website out as soon as possible. I may end up just getting something dirty out. It's going to be at sarasoueidan.dev instead of .com. That's where the 11t site will live until it's done. I will make the code open source. Actually, I'm building it in public. I haven't published any code yet, but I'm building it in public. So the repo is public. If anyone's interested in following along, you can follow along on GitHub. Yeah, I think that was the question.
Yeah, so from my end, I can say, well, because I've been going through the same thing as well. And, I was almost finishing. I thought at least that I'm finishing everything by July. No, that didn't happen. And now we're looking at what we have November. It just takes a lot of time, like video editing, subtitles, setting it all up, making sure that everything is aligned, making sure that everything is properly well done and it's working. Payment methods. It's not a Sunday project, I would say. Just takes slightly more time. And if you need any tips from me, because I was going through all the platforms that have any kind of video course capability, I went for all of them. But I know if you're building it on your own or something custom. But yes, it's that's been a journey indeed. So. Well, interesting. I also heard something else that in the meantime, and that would be maybe one of the later questions. By the way, Rashkeshva asked if you could post a repo URL at some point.
Maybe? I have an article on my blog. Oops, what did I do there?
Right, and also if you need any help or so, we have wonderful people in here who are always happy to help. Offer Charles is one of them, but I think that everybody else as well. So that's fun. That's great. Fantastic. I think
love
Greg
our
posted the
community,
link.
but even in my personal life, I have difficulty asking people for things. So when I'm asking people for things, it means that I've tried everything I could possibly do and given up at some point. So I will definitely, most likely, probably ask people for help setting up the payment system, because I have very limited options, because once again, Lebanon payment systems, not all of them work. I wanted to use Stripe, but unfortunately it's not possible as an option. So yes, at some point I will ask for help, but right now I'm trying to focus just on creating the content. And once that is ready, I can start thinking about the other stuff.
Right. Maybe then just to wrap up, we have exactly 3.5 minutes left. So what's next for you, Sarah? What are you really excited about? What are you going to do after this call? What are you going to do tomorrow? Do you have an urgent project that requires your immediate attention, or what's on your plate? So
after this talk, I'm going to rest for an hour before I have a call with my client, whose project I'm currently working on. So I've turned my work week into a 4-day work week. So Monday to Thursday is working on this client project. And then Friday to Sunday is doing anything else I want to do, like working on the course or working on my website. That's what I'm currently doing. I don't have any conferences lined up yet. We should maybe talk about it. We should, definitely. Next year. Well, yes. For next year, but we should do it soon. We have something planned for next year. Yes. Yeah. Looking forward to it very much, actually. And there's that secret thing, but that you will tell us now. No, not now. I want. That is actually hint. At least give us a hint. You're going to like it. That's not enough. That's not good enough. You need to do better than that. I can't talk about it just yet, but I'm pretty sure that you're going to like it. But not just me, many people will like it. Yes, by you, I mean people. And you are going to like it because it's something, I can give you a hint. It's something that you've been asking of me for a few years. Don't try to guess the answer now. I don't want to give out anything. This is going to be difficult. So how am I going to sleep tonight? This is going to drive me in circles. No, it's not. No? Okay. All right. Well, but thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us. And I think that it was a wonderful conversation. Should we make it a Netflix show? I would. Well, I'm not sure about Netflix yet. That is very ambitious, but I mean, you know us. We are very ambitious. I mean, I'm totally in for doing something monthly. Absolutely. If people are interested in that. If not, I mean, I'm here. Sure. Excellent. Whatever. All right. Well, Jaren, please take note. We need to send a proposal to Netflix by tomorrow. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Sarah, thank you so much for joining as well. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon, and very much excited about your upcoming course and everything that you're doing. So please keep doing that. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you. So everyone, also thank you so much for being with us today. If you are interested in other things that we're doing, you can just go to smashingconf.com. We have some other really cool things and conferences and workshops, and hopefully we also will get Sarah on the list of speakers for next year as well. Yes, hopefully. Right. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, bye-bye, everyone. And have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.